Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you're doing well. I'm here today with a book haul, and just full disclosure up front, this is all going to be books related to the U.S. Civil War. So if that's not your jam, I apologize. Hopefully, I'll be talking about something of more interest to you next time. But just to set the stage, in case you didn't know, I've been reading James McPherson's famous Battle Cry of Freedom. It's supposed to be, at least from what I've heard, the one volume treatment of the Civil War. If you're interested in the era, that's supposed to be required reading. And I have to say, so far, it's been living up to the hype. I'm really enjoying it. I am through the secession of the Deep South, so called Cotton States, and McPherson describes that as a preemptive counter-revolution, which really interested me because I've never heard it described in exactly those terms before. And what he means by that is that the excitement and fervor that occurred in the North in response to the platform of Lincoln and this exciting new Republican Party could almost be likened to a kind of revolutionary fervor. So the dread that occurred in the South in response to that platform's overwhelming electoral victory could be called a counter-revolutionary fervor of sorts. But since nothing had really happened yet, really no one could point to anything except the fact that Lincoln had won an election and it was going to be a very Republican-heavy Congress. You almost have to call it a preemptive counter-revolution, which is really kind of an awkward construct, but I thought it made a strange sort of sense. So, yeah, I really like that. That's something new I've picked up. And, of course, I've gotten through Fort Sumter now, and I've started on a chapter that's going to deal with the fallout from that and how the upper South states that haven't seceded yet and may have more of a unionist sentiment are going to respond. May not be so positively for the North in some cases. But anyway, that's where I'm at. The main thing I have enjoyed about the McPherson book is getting more details about the antebellum years. I am pretty familiar with the war itself, but yeah, the antebellum years, I really just kind of know the bullet points. So I've been really intrigued getting more detail there, and I decided I wanted to order some of the books that I have seen McPherson referencing a lot. So yeah, that's what I have here. Without further ado, first I have David M. Potter's The Impending Crisis. And I guess it's basically just a survey of the antebellum years. It seems to have received a lot of praise. It's introduced by, I think it was finished as well, by Don Fehrenbacher, who actually have another book of his here. This isn't one I ordered recently. This is one I've had seen around waiting for attention. Prelude to Greatness, Lincoln in the 1850s. Kind of fits in with the theme of the antebellum years. I'd actually like to get Fehrenbacher's book about the Dred Scott decision as well. But back to this. Yeah, it is cited quite heavily by McPherson, and I'll read a little bit of the back just to give you an idea. David M. Potter's Pulitzer Prize winning The Impending Crisis is the definitive history of antebellum America. Potter's sweeping epic masterfully charts the chaotic forces that climaxed with the outbreak of the Civil War: westward expansion, the divisive issue of slavery, the Dred Scott decision, John Brown's uprising, the ascension of Abraham Lincoln, and the drama of Southern secession. Now available in a new edition, The Impending Crisis remains one of the most celebrated works of American historical writing. It's pretty high praise. Sounds interesting. So I want it on my bookshelf, so hopefully I'll be finding out what I think sooner rather than later. Okay, along similar antebellum lines, I have here The Southern Dream of Carribean Empire, 1854 to 1861. And what's going on here? The South was really interested in expanding potential slave territory, certainly out west in the continental United States, but they were also looking further south to the Caribbean and to Mexico and even to Central America. And there were some really crazy stories there. Annexation was talked about, but sometimes attempts at fomenting rebellion and even just outright invasion were attempted to facilitate some of these territories being added to the United States as slave domains that would add to the South's influence. So yeah, that all really interested me, thus me getting this book. I'll read you a little bit here. A path-breaking work, when first published in 1973, The Southern Dream remains the standard work on attempts by the South to spread American slavery into the tropics, Cuba, Mexico, and Central America in particular, before the Civil War. Robert May shows how the Southern expansionists had no more success with this effort than when they tried to extend slavery westward. His fascinating and often surprising account internationalizes the causes of the Civil War and serves as an important reminder that foreign policy cannot be divorced from the writing of American history. It should be read by anyone who wishes to understand the complex reasons why Americans came to blows with each other in 1861. So, yeah, I'm sold. I'll be reading that one soon as well. And the final one that kind of fits in with that theme, Antebellum Years, have here Lincoln and His Party in the Secession Crisis, also by David M. Potter. And this is about what Lincoln and, I'll just say, some of the people around him were trying to do during Buchanan's lame duck period as the Deep South cotton states were seceding. They were trying to walk that fine line of not antagonizing the Deep South further, but even more importantly, trying to keep the Upper South states in the fold. So, yeah, I was really intrigued by all the debates and strategy that was at play there, even though they technically had no power to implement anything yet. So, and Buchanan wasn't much help. He was basically just punting. He didn't want anything to do with it. He just wanted out of there. So, I'll read you a little bit of the back. Originally published in 1942, this perceptive and impartial analysis of one of the most baffling periods in American history, the months between the election of Lincoln and the fall of Fort Sumter, was a bold declaration of intellectual independence. David M. Potter revolted against the prevailing Southern argument that Lincoln deliberately provoked the South into war to bring a violent end to slavery, arguing instead that the new president followed the least aggressive course available to him in dealing with the secession crisis. Based on a painstaking examination of the writings and statements of both the Northern principal players in the crisis and other, lesser-known Republicans who revealed the sentiment of the party's rank and file, this groundbreaking study details the Republicans' attitudes to the threat of secession, their reaction to the actual withdrawal of the Southern states, and their faith that the Union could be restored without violence. So, yeah, again, I'm very interested for very similar reasons. These next few are just more general Civil War books. I have here Brady's Civil War Journal, Photographing the War, 1861 to 1865. And if you're familiar, Matthew Brady and his assistants using early photographic practices really are responsible for a lot of the iconic images of the war. And this is just a nice collection of all those, well, not all of them, but a lot of those most iconic images. I'll just read the back to you. Matthew Brady and his team of assistants risked their lives to capture up-close images of the fury of the American Civil War and its aftermath. Brady actually got so close to the action during the First Battle of Bull Run that he only narrowly avoided capture. Brady's Civil War Journal chronicles the events of the war by showcasing a selection of Brady's moving, one-of-a-kind images and describing each in terms of its significance. Brady's team not only captured thousands of portraits of the combatants, the generals, the fighting men, the sick, the dead, and the dying, but also documented the infrastructure of the war machine itself, recording images of artillery pieces, the early railroads, and extraordinary engineering feats. The text by Theodore P. Savas, an expert on the Civil War, adds context to Brady's memorable photographs, creating an unrivaled visual account on the most costly conflict in American history as it unfolded. His unique record of the war gives modern readers a fascinating insight into the terrible maelstrom that shaped our nation. So, yeah, just a lot of very striking images in here and text that gives the timeline and the context. Might show you a couple of them here. I'll spare you the images of bloated corpses. But, well, I really like this one. That's Alan Pinkerton, Lincoln, and General McClellan, I believe, visiting the Antietam battlefield a couple weeks after the battle. Hospital. Member of the nursing corps there. I thought this was neat. It's a huge signal tower. It was built in Virginia, I believe, during the siege of Petersburg. I think that sucker was 150 feet tall. Maybe it was 120. Yeah, I thought that was pretty nifty. So yeah, that gives you an idea of the range of stuff in there. These last couple are pretty simple. I don't have a proper Civil War atlas, so I've remedied that. I have here one by James McPherson, same guy that wrote Battle Cry Freedom. Even has the same image of Antietam or Sharpsburg there on the front. So, but this is pretty standard layout that you get with this kind of thing. Here's Gettysburg. You get the pretty standard battlefield maps you get with the photos and some eyewitness accounts and drawings and timelines, that sort of thing. It's a nice little atlas. And I also got the National Geographic one. I'm into maps, so. And this, you get similar material, but what sold me on this one, let's see if I can find a good example here. Just a second. If this takes too long, you might get an awkward edit in here. There we go. You get these, that's the peninsula. You get these kind of, I don't know what you'd call them, vista perspectives, and also some topographic maps that really give you a feel for the terrain. So I was really taken by those. So I wanted to get this atlas as well. But anyway, that's the last of the books I ordered. I'm looking forward to digging into all of those. If you're just here for the books, I thank you for joining me. And I'll be doing a little bit of information about my various hobbies at the end of this, but if you have no interest, I wish you well, and I will hopefully I see you again, but hopefully you're interested enough to visit me here again. But I'm glad you stopped by in any case. Take care. And for the rest of you, I'll see you on the other side of darkness. Okay, first I thought I'd show you some more detail about the Pyramid Lego project. See here the barges. Gate, the causeway. You can get these guys, which I guess are supposed to be Sphinx-like statues, but there's only so much you can get with Legos, I guess. The impression of plant life here with the smaller pyramids. Buildings. Little obelisk. More plants. I don't know if I'm capturing on camera, but there are several layers here. Now, these things along the side are supposed to be sand dunes. I don't think they're particularly convincing, but they're not exactly the star of the show. And here's the pyramid with the limestone casing stones and capstone intact. And the lighting is sold separately. It's just LED lights, and there's your battery pack. I believe it takes 3 AA batteries. There's a switch on there. So yeah, there's one view. Okay, another neat feature of this set is that the casing blocks are actually a separate assembly. I have them sitting in back there. And underneath, you have something that gives the impression of the Sandstone Core blocks with the pyramid under construction. Now, there's still, of course, debate over the pyramid's construction. This is just kind of for fun, but I like this detail. Because you know what you see when you see video or photos of the pyramid today are the bare sandstone blocks. My understanding is the limestone casing blocks were removed over the centuries, probably used in other projects. But yeah, the pyramid at one time probably would have been a very light color, probably shined in the sun, so would have been a sight. Yeah, about the only thing I can really call a disappointment with this set is that you are only getting half a pyramid, as you can see here. But to be realistic, it is already a lot of pieces. And there is the positive side that at least you get an approximation of the real pyramid's internal passageways here. Get the king's chamber with the sarcophagus there, and underneath the queen's chamber with the pointy roof, and the grand gallery and the descending passage. I just think they call those angled passages coming up from the king's chamber the air shafts. Now, I'm mistaken, there should be air shafts coming up from the queen's chamber as well, but once again, we're dealing with Legos here. There's probably only so much realism you're going to get. But yeah, there is an option to buy and build another set and link them together. These little holes down here in these peg attachments to get a full pyramid, but I'm not that obsessed. I'm happy to just display it on a shelf and call it honor met. So yeah, hopefully I'm giving you an idea of what the thing's like. I'll just give you one final shot of the thing with the lights on and call this thing video complete. There you go. There's your set with the lights on. Like I said, the lights are sold separately, and they're a little tricky to install because you're dealing with some pretty fine wires, and someone like me has pretty clumsy fingers, but if you can follow instructions, it's not too terrible. Got these blue ones down here. The wire runs underneath the edge blocks to the back there. You have these green bulbs. You have to feed the wire underneath the blocks. I did it as I was building, but if you wait until the construction is complete, you'll have to take some of the blocks apart. But yeah, then the wire again runs along the edge underneath there, back to the battery box. I have the battery box behind the pyramid. Then you have these white lights that are just a strip that run there in the border along the base of the pyramid. Give you that neat kind of lined effect there. You can see where the wire just runs straight to the back there. And there are a couple little lamps that just sit up underneath the gates there. They're a little bit of a pain to get into place. Get the wires manipulated. You can see where they run underneath the little statue type deals there. That's about the only place you can really see the wires, is there and right back behind that gate there. But overall, they're not really that visible, and I don't think it's a bad trade-off for this effect. I think it's pretty cool. So, hope you enjoy this. I was going to talk about my new project, but I think this is probably dragging on way too long already, so I think I'll leave that for another day. But as always, I really appreciate you joining me. I hope you're doing well, and I hope to talk at you another time. Take care.
But am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?